Tracy did it. She's got a wonderful artistic eye, and I so appreciate that. It's wonderful. And to you, Ken, you hockey puck. I hope you all know Don Rickles, otherwise I'm in big trouble. You know, I've never said that during a worship service. I'm shocked at that, I know. So, during our Lenten season, there have been two themes running throughout. One is rather obvious when we've talked about it, and the other flies under the radar. The first, we've said over and over each week, it's about Jesus. It's not primarily about me, it's about Jesus. All of it's been clear each week. It should be clear as we read the Gospels. The second image that's there each week is an image of travel. And it has been unexplored. So let me walk you through it. Did you get my puns there? I mean, I worked hard on that part. Unexplored, walk through it, okay. Anyway, so we kind of got to run into Lent with Transfiguration. In fact, we had our first 30 seconds of silent prayer on that week. On Transfiguration Sunday, Jesus led Peter, James, and John up into a high mountain. Then on the first Sunday of Lent, we had the temptation of Jesus. Jesus was led by the Spirit out into the wilderness. Then in Lent 2, we have that wonderful passage from John 3, where John says, that God says, I sent my Son into the world, not to condemn the world, but that the world might be saved through him. In this, God is saying, my love travels to you in Jesus. Lent 3, the woman at the well, you remember? Jesus traveled to Samaria, the bad powder town, if you will, a place you wouldn't go alone. Then in Lent 4, excuse me, the man born blind. There are two travel things here. One is the man born blind, and the other is all of the questions that were surrounded around that. Is this the man? They asked his friends. Then the Pharisees went to his parents and said, was this boy really born blind, or is this a hoax? And then they called the boy in. Then they called his parents back, and his parents said, he's old enough, he's of age, you ask him. And they called him back again. So both the man born blind who was healed and all of these attendant questions traveled back and forth, quite a bit. Then last week, the raising of Lazarus. Jesus heard that Lazarus was in hospice, and he waited a couple of days extra, and then he traveled all of the way to Bethany. And today, it's obvious. There's a parade. Jesus goes into Jerusalem, after which he needs to make some of the most important decisions of his life. So all of these speak to that sense of travel. This Palm passage, this journey into Jerusalem, this part of the journey begins in crime. I mean, even back then, there was crime. There was a donkey jacking that took place. As someone pointed out, Jesus was constantly setting out without luggage, setting out empty so that he could pick up other people's baggage along the way, their sorrows, their sins, their illnesses, their despair. He starts out empty, ready to pick those up for us. And what's more, Jesus offered some very strange rules for the road. You know, when you're traveling, you check in with AAA, and they tell you the things to do and not to do, places go. Well, Jesus had some of his own. He said, go the extra mile. If someone asks you to go a mile, go 2. Turn the other cheek. Give your coat as well as your cloak. Cross the road to help, but don't cross the road to avoid. In the shack, there's an interesting interchange between Mac and Jesus. Mac says to Jesus, do all roads lead to you? Jesus says, no, not at all. Most roads don't lead anywhere. He said, well, what I do mean to say is I will travel any road to find you. That's what this Lenten season is about. It's about Jesus, willing to travel any road to find us. Now, during this Lenten journey, we have paused each week, just as one would pause on any significant journey. If you were to drive back to Washington, D.C., you wouldn't just get in the car and not stop along the way. So we, during this Lenten season, have paused as well. We have paused in silent prayer and listening. Can anybody tell me how many minutes of silent prayer we've had so far in the season of Lent? Counting Transfiguration. 15 and a half, because we had a half of, we got to run into it, so you're anyway. That's a significant amount of time. Today we're going to pause in silent prayer and reflection for 6 more minutes. This is the 6th Sunday of Lent. I'm going to be offering you 3 questions that I think this Palm Sunday passage brings for us. A time to pray and reflect. Now, this may be a time when you can write on your card whatever has been in your mind. And it may be a time when you write on the card something in reaction to the question that's at hand, whatever you like. But we will ask 3 questions. After each question, we'll have 2 minutes of silent prayer, meditation, and then we'll go on to the next one. Following the 3rd question, we'll have 2 minutes of silence, and then we'll hear if we're honest. So, for the first question, did you notice that when Jesus reached Jerusalem, the scripture says, the whole city was in turmoil. They were asking, who is this? When the parade is over, he gets into Jerusalem and the whole town is talking. Who is this guy? What was that parade about? Why were they there? And Jesus Christ, superstar of the crowd on Palm Sunday saying, Christ, you know I love you. Did you see I waved? So the first Lenten question, who is Jesus to you? In your heart, not your head. It's not a theological question. Who is Jesus to you? During this Lenten season, you may have noticed that your faith journey never ends. Anyone feel completed in your journey of faith? You're all done? You got to the end? Silly question. With each step, there's always the next step. I learned that in line dancing, I think, too. With each step, there's then the next step. When the psalmist talks about a light unto my feet, he's talking about carrying a lamp that only shows a little bit in front of you. And until you take that step, you can't see where the next step goes. As with everything in life, we always ask the question, what's next? What's next? Sometimes with great joy. Oh man, this has been cool, what's next? Or sometimes, as Ken pointed out, it's with sadness and sorrow. What next in this crazy world? But each time you take a step, it requires the next step. So we have walked our way through most of the Lenten season, and we are now confronting Holy Week, or Holy Week is confronting us. Lots of stuff is going to be happening in this week to Jesus. Lots of difficult stuff. So the question for you is, are you going to walk around the passion, the betrayal, the pain, the sorrow, the suffering, and show up again around Easter time? Or are you going to walk through it just as he did? Seeing all that he did. Where you put down your foot next is your choice. So the next Lenten question is, what is next in my journey of faith? What is next in my journey of faith? Did you notice in the story that before the donkey could be of use to Jesus, it had to be untied? Seems pretty simple, right? Before it could be of use to Jesus, it had to be untied. That's how it is with us. Before we are free of the stuff of our lives, Jesus can't really use us. Now, sometimes we simply like the things the way they are. You know, I got it figured out, I know how to do this. Or we're tied down to things that we don't want to give up. You know, we like our routines because we got it figured out, and so we're tied into those. But until we're untied, we can't be of use to Jesus. What is it that we don't want to be untied about? There's a little neighbor girl when we were back in Brentwood who was over playing, and she left her Slinky toy when she went home. And so I rescued it from Eric, and I put it up on the table so that next time she came I could give it to her, I could take it over to her house. And it slunk over. I think slunk's the word. And then it not only slunk over, but it slunk off the table and onto the floor. And then it slunk again. And I looked at it and I thought to myself, man, the stupid thing works. Right? The stupid thing works. We so want things to be normal. Want things to be set. Things we can count on. But God's work, God's journey doesn't stay that way. It slunks. And oftentimes it does so in directions we didn't expect, or at times we didn't expect, or in times and places that were inconvenient. So, looking at the things that tie us down, some of the pre-questions for you: what is it you are comfortable with and don't want to give up? What don't you want to change? What don't you want to let go of? What has a hold on you? What keeps you where and as you are? So the third Lenten question is, what is tying you down, keeping you from being of use to God? What is tying you down, keeping you from being of use to God?